So this is in reference to the four madhahib and the place of the four madhahib and why the four madhahib and all of that stuff. So the Sahaba, and I have a position on the four madhahib that I believe to be a moderate one. I don't basically geometrically adjust my positions to be in the middle, in the geometrical middle, because that doesn't make sense. But sometimes they just turn out to be somewhere in the geometrical or mathematical middle. But anyway, so the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim were able to deduce, or at least the scholars among them, which were many, were able to deduce the rulings from the text of the revelation, whether it's Quran and Sunnah. But for later generations, you see how this process can become messed up completely. Like if you allow the public to just examine the Quran and Sunnah by themselves, you will come up with like 2 million madhahib. Because people will, and you will come up with wild positions as well. That are completely baseless and that are completely in discord with the text of Revelation, because there is a process. The hermeneutical system of Islam is a very solid one, and the masses don't necessarily have that much knowledge about, the usul of interpretation, the usul of deduction. So we have a solid hermeneutical system. And a scholar needs to have sort of a vast knowledge of the reports and deep knowledge of the hermeneutical system, the process of deduction. Therefore, the madhahib are our greatest, intellectual wonders. If we do away with them, that would be basically suicidal. However, there are a couple of points here. One is the truth is not limited to the four madhahib. Sometimes there may be positions outside the four madhahib that are true and that are worth adopting. I'll give you one position. Not because I'm biased. I may be biased. I'm a human being. Why not? We're all biased. So, but yeah, you just can't not be biased. But this, like 3 divorces counting as 1 divorce, for instance, 3 divorces in one utterance counting as 1 divorce. This is not a position this is not the authorized position of any of the 4 madhahib. This is a position of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah that has been accepted by the legislatures in many Muslim countries where, by legislatures that are not particularly sympathetic to Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, or they don't necessarily like him to begin with. But they basically cite him as the authority in this regard. Why? Because there are certain conditions that need to be met to accept a position from outside of the 4 madhahib. One of them is that the position has to be upheld by a mujtahid, and he had his own adversaries, acknowledging that he was a mujtahid. The second is that the position has to be a substantial one that has some basis in the revelation. That position has basis in a hadith reported by Muslim, from Abdullah ibn Abbas, that 3 counted as 1 during the time of the Prophet and the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhuma. And the position has to be one that has not been completely abandoned and has been mainstreamed by, a group of Muslim scholars. And certainly with the legislatures in many Muslim countries accepting this, such as, because I'm from Egypt, so I know in Egypt it is there. I know Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, these countries. I know that this position has been accepted in those countries by legislatures in those countries. So a position like this can be mainstreamed, I will give you another example that may look a little bit even weaker, but I believe that it is a position that can be mainstreamed. I have always advised pregnant and breastfeeding women who have, who miss Ramadan successively because of their pregnancy and breastfeeding, and then they accumulate 6 or 7 Ramadans where they couldn't fast because they were either breastfeeding or pregnant. I have always advised them that they may just give the fidya, and they don't have to make up for the, for 400 days, that they need to make up. Well, this position is not authorized in any of the 4 madhab. And being a Hanbali myself, that position is not a Hanbali position, and certainly Hanbalis would frown at this position. But this position is from Al-Khilaf Al-Ali, that we say Al-Khilaf Al-Ali meaning that it's reported from higher up. It's reported from Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Umar. And some contemporary scholars, like Sheikh Sayyid Sabiq, Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, Sheikh Nasir al-Albani, Sheikh Atiyya Saqr, although Sheikh Atiyya Saqr, mentioned it as a possibility, did not necessarily support it, but the others supported it, and others. So these are scholars, and the idea that we now should have no mujtahideen and that ijtihad ended, that's suicidal also, because like we are going to act like we're without a brain. It's an ummah without a brain that, can basically address new issues and can make ijtihad and can provide guidance for the people, despite the fact that there had been enormous changes, social changes in the last 200 years. So to deprive the ummah of its brain and not allow it to address the enormous changes in the last 200 years in the world that we live in and the nature of the world that they live in would be suicidal. And Sharia will become irrelevant. And we would have done it to ourselves. And then we could come back and cry and say, so why is all of this happening? Why is nobody giving attention to or caring about the Sharia or any of that stuff? So the 4 madhab are at the heart of our heritage. We go to them first, and then there may be positions outside the 4 madhab. We go through a process of mainstreaming those positions, because we're not going to allow anybody who just simply has a PhD in fiqh to come up with positions and to start to spread them and so on and so forth. There has to be a process, collective ijtihad. And Sheikh Mustafa al-Zarqa, rahimahullah, did mention that we need to invest more in collective ijtihad as a way out of the problem of chaos or complete freezing. There has to be an answer in the middle. And I think that we have to have a process, and the process is acceptance, widespread acceptance of a position that is adopted by a mujtahid, whether from the past or the present. If there is widespread acceptance through the process of collective ijtihad, or even widespread acceptance without, collective ijtihad, separate ijtihads that, agreed on a position, then that position can be mainstreamed and can be considered a viable position. That's the one contingency here with my emphasis, that doesn't detract from my emphasis on the importance and centrality of the 4 madhahib. The second contingency is that the 4 madhahib are meant, people who study fiqh are the people who should subscribe to the 4 madhahib. There is controversy between the scholars whether the masses, the public, the lay persons should subscribe to a madhab or not, and the position that I believe in to be stronger wholeheartedly is that the masses should not subscribe to a madhab. Because if you ask someone, why do you subscribe to a madhab? And all he can say is, that's our madhab. Well, that's partisanship. That is basically fanaticism. Add a little bit of, hot-bloodedness that we all have to this, and you create all the troubles in the world that we have witnessed and that we continue to witness. So the public should not. By default, the public may be following a madhab because their scholar that they're referring to all the time in the, happen to be Shafi'i or Hanafi or Hanbali or Maliki. Well, that's fine. That's okay. But they should not subscribe to something they cannot defend their decision. The decision of subscribing to it, they cannot defend it with any, they can't rationally defend it. So anyway, nowadays with the internet, it's a little bit different because it's not like, people who live in Upper Egypt are more Maliki and people who live in Lower Egypt are more Shafi'i. The world is not divided like this anymore because everybody goes online and everybody whatever follows whatever they are. So I have a lot of people studying Hanbali stuff with me, Hanbali law with me, and they text me on WhatsApp and, from Bangladesh and from different parts of the world that Hanbalism has never been popular in. Should we be irritated by this? Should their parents be irritated by this? Why? Why don't you leave them? Why don't you respect their spiritual agency? Why don't you, like Al-Imam ibn Hajar al-Haytami, who's a very, very madhabi person, a very Shafi'i, very madhabi person, he said when a father orders his son to follow his madhab, that is not binding on the son, because if there is no purpose in that, it is utter foolishness. That's what he said. So so we're not talking about a contemporary liberal this and that. We're just talking about your very, very classical, traditional scholar who's very madhabi. He said that if the father orders his son to follow his madhab, and there is no purpose in this, like a good purpose would be like what? Son, there are no Hanbalis here. How are you going to do it? That's a good purpose. But if the son figured out a way to do it, then that's fine, So when there is no good purpose, then it's utter foolishness.